I saved for 3 years for this trip. The night before our flight, my mom called and said, "You have to watch your sister's kids." My dad got on the phone and said, "Family comes first." I said no. I got on the plane anyway. When we landed, I had 38 missed calls, and my sister's last text said they're at your door. I didn't turn my phone back on until we'd cleared customs in Reykjavik. 38 missed calls. Voicemails stacked from my mother, my father, a number I didn't recognize, and one from my sister that just said, "Call me." I played my mother's first. She was crying. "Where are you? Why didn't you answer? You need to come home right now. This is on you." I didn't understand what this was yet, so I called the unknown number back first. A police officer picked up. He told me that earlier that morning, my sister had driven her 2 kids to my house. She'd walked them up to my porch, knocked, and told them their aunt would be right out. She was probably in the shower, just wait. Then she got back in her car and left. I wasn't there. I hadn't been there in hours. I was already at the gate. My neighbor noticed the kids sitting on my steps about 20 minutes later. My 6-year-old nephew had wrapped his jacket around his little sister because it had gotten cold. My neighbor knocked on my door, got no answer, checked my windows, and called it in. By the time the officer arrived, the kids were safe, but nobody could reach my sister. My parents, when contacted, said she was traveling for work, a conference somewhere out of state. There was no conference. Your sister mentioned she'd be reachable if there was an emergency, the officer said. This felt like an emergency. I told him I needed a minute and hung up so I could think. Here's what my family conveniently forgot in the panic. I had told my sister I would be out of the country for this trip more than a month in advance. Not casually, I'd put it in writing. I'd sent a group email to her and both my parents with the exact dates, our flight times, and one line that I'd typed out specifically because I didn't trust it to survive a phone call unchanged. "I will not be available for childcare of any kind during this window." My sister had replied to that email with a thumbs up emoji, nothing else. My parents hadn't replied at all, which I'd taken at the time to mean they'd read it and understood. I pulled the email up on my phone right there in the terminal and reread my own sentence twice, just to be sure I hadn't imagined being that clear. My mother called again while I was still staring at the screen. I answered. "You need to get on a flight home tonight," she said, before I'd even said hello. "The kids are safe. I already talked to the officer. They were sitting on a porch alone in the cold. I was never going to be there. I told all 3 of you that a month ago." She didn't have an answer for that right away. Then she pivoted, the way she always does. "Your sister's going through something. She left her kids outside a house she knew was empty." I said, "That's not needing help. That's a plan." My father took the phone. "Family comes first." I'd heard it the night before, and I heard it again now, and it didn't move me at all. "I'm not coming home early," I told him, "but I'm not driving 12 hours to fix something I told you 3 separate times I wouldn't be available for." He hung up. That used to be the part where I'd panic and call back. I didn't. The caseworker reached out the next morning, and this was the part that actually changed things. She'd already spoken with my sister's employer. There was no conference. My sister had told the school and the babysitter she normally used that she'd be away for work, but she hadn't been at work in over a week. Nobody at her office had scheduled anything. The caseworker asked me directly whether this looked like a pattern or a one-time lapse. I thought about every time my sister had asked me for just an hour that turned into an overnight. Every time a small favor had somehow become an obligation I hadn't agreed to. I told her honestly it wasn't new. It was just the first time it hadn't worked. I forwarded her the group email, the one with the dates, the flight times, and the line about childcare. I forwarded her my sister's thumbs up reply too, time-stamped a month before any of this happened. The caseworker's exact words when she called back that afternoon were that this wasn't a miscommunication. It was something my sister had planned around, specifically